Hi friends, it's Terry Stewart, Independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator located in Central Maryland. Welcome to the May 2023 Bundle Bonus. This month we're featuring the Nature's Prints along with the dies, the coordinating dies, the natural prints. Now, you're watching this in May 2023, they are not a bundle, but they do coordinate. So we're doing a bundle bonus, and I'm really excited to share my project with you. So let's jump in. So as I told you, the May 2023 bundle that we're featuring is the Nature's Prints, and I have shared this stamp set in the past and the things I like about it. I love that there's these greenery elements, these ferns, some floral elements. Here's a flower, there's some splatters, and then you have these great sentiments. You're on my mind, hello, thank you, and best wishes. So it really is very versatile. And then the coordinating die set has dies that match some of the imagery. So there's the leafy thing. I think there's a fern in here, a sprig. And then there's little flowers, there's a wreath, there's an image for the flower stem. So it's just a variety of dies. The one I'm using today is this one that coordinates with some of the sentiments. So let me show you my project. So I'm using the fern element, the splatter element, and a sentiment, and then I have the label from the dies. So this is my card kit. These are the ingredients that I am using. So let's start with the bottom. I'm starting with a half sheet folded in half of crumb cake, a layer of garden green 3 7/8 by 5 1/8, and that is 9.8 by 14.2 centimeters. I'm layering that with a piece of another piece of crumb cake, and this is 3 3/4 by 5 inches, or 9.5 by 13.9 centimeters. And then for the inside, I have a piece of manila, and that's 4 by 5 1/4, or 10 by 14.4 centimeters. On the front, I'm using a piece of this vellum. This is the Basics Vellum Pack. I don't know if you can see, it has a leaf pattern in it. There's also a polka dot pattern and a striped, I think a diagonal stripe pattern in that pack. Really, really nice. And then I have a scrap of crumb cake that I'm going to stamp my sentiment on and fussy cut, and then a piece of garden green, and this is a scrap, and I've cut out that label from the Natural Prints dies. So let's, and an envelope, and of course I want to stamp on my envelope. I love stamping on envelopes just to give them a little bit of pizzazz, a taste of what's coming inside. So what we're going to stamp today is I'm going to do my sentiment on that. I am going to stamp on my insert, my crumb cake, and my envelope. So let's start with this piece. I'll put the other pieces aside and stamp them. The colors I've used for ink, I am going with crumb cake, so kind of a tone on tone, garden green. So it's monochromatic, but it's really two colors that are being in use on this card. Garden green and crumb cake being the focal points. So let's stamp with garden green using the fern. If you've watched my videos in the past, you know I like to keep my stamp area pristine while I'm filming, so I'm bringing in a piece of scrap paper to catch any extraneous ink. So with the garden green ink, I am inking up my stamp, and my plan is to do 5 ferns in various directions. So do one in this direction, one in this direction, one in the middle, and then on the right and the left corners. Maybe it's going to come in this way, maybe like that. So while I have my Garden Green ink out, I'm going to also stamp on my insert, my vanilla insert. Again, ink it up and do some random patterns at the bottom. Maybe this is a little curve down here. And also on my vanilla envelope, I just like to tease a little bit what's coming on the outside of the envelope. So I'm going to mimic what's on that insert. So, and I'm doing the power of 3. It's more pleasing to the eye to have an odd number, so I'll just do a little bit of a fern pattern on that. Now that is all the Garden Green I'm using today. The next color we'll be using is the Crumb Cake. Let me bring back my front panel, and this time we're going to be using this splotchy pattern. I know that's a technical term, splotchy. And basically I'm just going to fill in where there's some blank spots where around the ferns. And I'm going to turn my stamp just to give some variety of splotches. So I'm giving a little bit of pressure and giving a few seconds for the ink to transfer from the stamp onto the cardstock. And I think I want a little bit up here on the edge, so I'm just going to use this little bit of splatter on the sides. And maybe down here too. So that is all for the front. Now for our insert, I'll add some splotches and maybe not re-ink and just do a second generation, and maybe just a little bit over here. So that is our insert, and now for our envelope, the same. I'll do some splotch down here. Maybe a splotch over here. Okay, so that is all for the envelope. Now for our greeting, I'm going to take away my scrap paper, no longer need that. My sentiment, and this is the heartfelt thank you, so I'll ink this up and stamp it on my scrap crumb cake. A little bit of pressure, a couple seconds, and then we get a nice transfer. And that's all the stamping. So now we're going to come to assembling, and I'm going to do a fussy cut, and I'm going to hold with my left and steer with my left and cut with my right. And there is no wrong or right. All I'm trying to do is keep some rounded corners and get pretty close to the stamped image. And I can always trim once I completed my cuts. So that looks pretty. So I'm pretty happy how that turns out. Now I'm going to put some dimensionals behind that. This will just help it from sagging. And I'm going to cut a little bit on this edge here and make a customized dimensional for that little bit, that piece there. So now I'm ready for assembly. So I'm going to take my front panel and my garden green panel and adhere that with my liquid glue. I like the liquid glue because it is forgiving. So if I don't get it placed right or where I would like it, I do have a few seconds to fiddle with it and move it around. So this has a very narrow border with just a little bit of the garden green cardstock peeking out from behind the crumb cake layer. And here is our card base. Now I've scored this in half. I'm going to fold it in half and use my bone folder to crisp up that score line. And adhere our front panel to that, our stamped image panel, again with my liquid glue, and making sure my ferns are going in the up direction. So I stamped them that way, knowing that I was having a portrait. I was making a portrait card. Now we're going to take my piece of vellum and I'm going to dry fit it here somewhat in the center of my card front, and yeah. So my vellum is too wide, so let me grab my paper trimmer, and this is supposed to be 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. So let me trim this up. There. Now it's the right size. So this will go right in the center, and then our die cut will go over it. Now vellum, typically if you put adhesive on the back, it shows through. So therefore I don't want any adhesive on these ends because only the center will be covered by the die cut. So I'm going to put adhesive on my die cut and it'll be covered. It won't be seen from the front. I'm just going to eyeball that this is in the center, and the label, these arms of the label are actually the same size as the width of the vellum, so it just fits in there very nicely. And maybe just a smidge. So this is where the liquid glue comes in good for positioning, because it is forgiving. And then behind this, I'm going to put some dimensionals. Again, right behind that label. So it's going to cover the glue and be hidden behind, the dimensionals are hidden behind that vellum piece. Behind the vellum and the label die cut. And then right in the center, or kind of center-ish, that looks good right there. And I did the dimensionals behind because I like this vellum lifted off the cardstock so you can really see that leaf pattern. And now for our sentiment, and that is going to be placed. Now I tried to give about the same distance on either the right and the left, the longest pieces of that, just so it looks like it's balanced in that die area, that rounded die area. Remove these covers. Oops. And make sure that it is not crooked. That looks nice. Then for the inside, we can adhere our inside panel. So this is a thank you note. I did not put a sentiment inside. When I go to send this, I'll personalize my note. I'll just send thanking the recipient for whatever reason, and I'll just make a personal note inside rather than having a stamped thank you. So the embellishment I added to my sample are the flat adhesive back pearls. They really pick up the green in that garden green, and I just thought they looked so lovely. So I'm using these, and I'll bring in my take your pick tool, and that putty end is great for picking up embellishments like these. Pick one up, and I'm using 5, and I'm just kind of putting them where there might be some open spots where the splatter didn't, there wasn't any stamped image. One down here. I had this one over here, there, and then wait, 2 more. Kind of draw your eye in a zigzag there, and maybe one here. Close together, not close over here. So hard to decide where to put these. I think I'm going to do right there. Oops, maybe I will do it right. There we go. And there's my finished card. I think it gives a very natural feeling. I think the crumb cake in the garden green just feels very earthy. And I like that, along with the envelope. So thank you so much for joining me for this bundle bonus. Please like and subscribe to my channel so I can bring you even more fun stamping projects. And until next time, remember, stamping is fun. Bye.